everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Tomcat Stitchery. I'm Whitney, and I have a little bit of a short one today, a little bit of a short tutorial. I've just had a lot of questions about from people asking recently about how I cut out my patterns. I don't use the pattern layouts at all. In fact, someone had said something about a pattern. I had recommended that they didn't have the, that they didn't have the pattern layout, pattern piece layout on fabric, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even notice that because I just don't use those layouts ever. So anyway, this is just a quick one. I'm showing you how I, number one, make sure that I'm laying my fabric out nice and flat on the table, as well as then very simply how I then lay my pattern pieces out. I'm showing you on a knit, but this would also work for wovens, which if you aren't cutting, front and back both out on the folds, you can just have one single fold, and I'll talk about that a little bit in the video. So hopefully this is helpful if you've also had issues with laying out your pattern pieces and making sure that you have enough fabric to make all those fit. All right, I hope you enjoyed this one, and as always, leave any questions or comments you have down below, and I'll answer those as soon as possible. Have a good one. Bye. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that our fabric is on grain. Now, I am using a knit fabric here, which can be a little harder to make sure that you're laying them out correctly. But this trick works for both woven and knit fabrics. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to match our fabric selvage to selvage. I was just checking the ribs to make sure that it was the selvage and not the cut edge. Now the next thing I do, and I've got a lot of fabric here on the end, I'm only really concerned about this front end, because once we have the front end laying nicely, then we can smooth it out when we lay it on the table. So as you can see, if you're holding it up and you're holding your cut edges together and you're getting rippling, see how the fabric's rippling? You just want to take and you want to adjust, and I'm just have my fingers between the two layers of the selvage, and I'm just moving one way, one side one way and the other side the other way, to where this is hanging really nice and flat. And now I know once we're hanging nice and flat, that we've got this on grain. So now I'm just going to lay this on the table and smooth everything out from this point. So let's go over to the table. Okay, once you have your fabric laid out, we're just going to now smooth things out. Now, if you're cutting this on the floor or on a gigantic cutting surface, just get as much as you can, nice and smoothed out. You don't want any fabric hanging off your table, though. If you're cutting out on a table, if you do have fabric hanging off the table, just fold that up at the end so that it's sitting at the end of the table so that it's not stretching out. Got my pattern pieces here. Okay, so now that, we found that nothing is twisting weird. Now, this is a knit fabric, like I mentioned, although this works the same for wovens. However, if you're noticing, sometimes knit fabrics will pull in at the selvage edge on the side. If you're noticing that, just cut the selvages off, and then it'll lie nice and flat. That happens a lot on rayons and viscoses, where that tighter selvage edge just pulls the knit in a little bit. Okay, so hopefully you can kind of see a little. All right, so let's talk about now if you don't have a cutting chart and how you may want to lay out your pattern pieces. I've got some excess pieces here I'm not using. All right. So for this pattern, again, this is a knit. I have a front, a back, and a sleeve piece. When you're cutting out knits, and this is something important to notice, now I have this laid out on the fold, just on a single fold, but I have a front and a back that are both on the, get cut on the fold. So when you have a situation like that, in order to conserve fabric, instead of folding just once on the fold, my suggestion is this is going to take some more finagling, unfold your fabric and fold each selvage to the center. Again, I have all of my fabric up on my table. You can't see the whole length, but it's there. This also works with wovens. If you have to cut the front and the back on the fold, you want to create 2 folds. So I'm just going to fold this both in. And you want to make sure that you don't have any rippling, that everything's lying nice and flat. It's on grain. See, it's rippling here on the edge. Can you see that? So I just want to pull this top layer up a little to get rid of that drag line, that wrinkle. I mean, you don't have to be overly fussy, but okay. So I'm just going to go down the length here. You can't see all of it, but I just want everything to lie nice and flat. All right. So again, if you're getting the selvages curling weird, you can just cut those off. All right. So now it's just a matter, and I know some of you cut on smaller surfaces where it can be harder to see. Hold on, this is getting a little bit of pull here. There we go. There we go. Smaller surfaces, and it can be hard to lay out your entire pattern. I totally get that. So just do it in chunks, or maybe if you have a large pattern, just cut everything out on the floor so you can spread everything out if you don't have a large cutting surface. I know I'm spoiled. But now it's just a matter of playing some pattern Tetris. So you want to put your bigger pieces down first, such as your fronts and your backs. And then from there, you know, if you have a really big sleeve, I have a small sleeve here, which I think, am I going to be able to make it work? Oh, I think I am. So then come in, you know, sleeves are usually big pieces, your bodices, skirt pieces. Go ahead and lay those down first, and then go back in with any of your facings or neck bands or pocket pieces, and you can fit those in little spots as well. Usually with fabric requirements for patterns, they estimate up, they give a little bit of extra. So as long as you are using, you know, laying your your patterns out economically and trying to squeeze those in as much as possible, you should be fine. I can't say that for sure across all patterns, but most of the time that is the case. So this is just a good way, big pieces first, and then you just fill in with your little pieces. And that is how I cut things out without using a cutting layout.